I want to first of all thank the Office of the Leader of Opposition for this opportunity to come and participate in your budget processes on behalf of civil society and the citizens. Thank you. The previous presenter has talked a lot about the basics of the budget, so I will deal with the political questions and maybe the constitutional questions, since that is my bias or area I specialize in. Just for purposes of emphasizing a few elements, budget is the most important economic policy tool of the government, and it provides a comprehensive statement of nation's priorities. As representatives of the people, you are always our eyes and ears, and the opposition specifically then becomes the critical voice of the population as the alternative government to come up with pro-people priorities. In the situation we are in, right honorable Leader of Opposition, we are in a current fiscal squeeze as a country, but also as a whole globe, with a shrinking funding base, including the freeze of donor aid by USAID globally, and that has affected critical sectors, especially health and education in our country. The previous weeks, we saw Parliament debating failure of the Ministry of Education to come up with a A-level curriculum. The process of consultants was being funded by USAID. And the question that Parliament should be asking is who is going to cover the gaps of all sectors in health and education, especially where USAID funds have been withdrawn. Is the current budget framework taking care of that? I was waiting for the director budget to address that. I hope you will get back to that question. Because as a citizen, I expect government to cover its critical sectors like health and education and stop relying on donors and foreigners for these critical sectors of citizens. We have caused a lot of worry to the people living with HIV/AIDS. I know that after the first announcement of donor freeze, the HIV/AIDS clinics called their patients to pick medicine for 6 months. But the political statements going on can also cause some death, because people living on these health drugs don't need to worry about, especially poor people. So if you have people worried about food, most people living with HIV/AIDS, what about a balanced diet? Now they've increased worry of uncertainty over medication. I would expect the Leader of Opposition and your cabinet, shadow cabinet, to make sure that these critical sectors are covered by government 100%. Whether USAID funds are restored or not, donor funds should go to less critical sectors, and health and education should be funded by government. We also have challenges of public debt, skyrocketing public debt, amidst skyrocketing corruption in the country. The figures that come from the IGG as official funds lost corruption are worrying, but also we know that they are not complete. The money lost corruption is beyond the 10 trillion that the IGG talks about, because the IGG survey did not cover money lost in procurement. And to make the majority accountable, I know that LoP and your committees, you chair the accountability committees. I've also seen the leads of these committees in the House, and you're doing a great work. What remains to be seen in the work of Parliament is recovery. Recovery of lost monies. We know that prosecution does not work in this country. We have rule by law, and the government only prosecutes those who oppose it and protects those that it considers their cadres. So it would be good for the leader of opposition and your shadow cabinet to move beyond handing over people to police and ordering recovery. Instead, I think that would benefit a taxpayer more than other monies we spend on fake prosecutions that end in nothing, and that's also loss of taxpayers' money. I don't know whether the laws provide for that, but I'm sure any process can order recovery of money. And I think that would benefit us more as a country. And the authority, so I want to speak briefly about the authority of Parliament. I know that the Director Budget touched on it. Some of us were at pain when the President wrote that letter on 26th June, or about there. It was published in Monitor on 26th June with a major headline, Budget Crisis. Museveni wants 750 billion reinstated. And part of the contents of this story was that the President read the Riot Act to our honorable members of Parliament. You do not have power over the budget, he vowed. And then, of course, the actions that later happened by the leaders of this institution were unfortunate to some of us. The Director Budget has gone through the details of the laws. The President went ahead to describe the act of reallocating these funds as indiscipline, budget sabotage, and corruption. He further claimed that budget had interfered with the constitutional mandate of the Finance Minister. It's not unusual for the President to act outside the Constitution. He always does. And he's only forced to act within the Constitution by the people. So when he made such ridiculous claims that Parliament has no budget, has no power over the budget, we kept watching as citizens on the stages that Parliament would take. I know some of you tried to push back, but the tyrant of numbers overwhelmed you. But this act, and I saw recently Honorable Shakawanda referring to this letter, this act of ceding your constitutional powers to executive in the budget process, and the assumption, of course the wrong assumption, that Parliament has no power to recommend amendments at committee stage was the most ridiculous, and in our view the last stroke by the executive in taking away the power of Parliament. It set a very bad precedent because the tyrant of numbers gave in to the demands of the executive, and I don't know how you're going to recover that power in this new process, or whether you can ask Parliament to vacate its own decisions. I don't know, because that was wrong, irregular, and unconstitutional. Parliament has its powers to appropriate. First of all, an appropriation bill is a bill like any other bill of Parliament. Under functions of Parliament, under Article 78, when the executive presents a bill, you debate, propose, amend, and adopt. The wish of us as citizens was that you should have rejected that bulldozing by the executive over the budget, and then because once you pass it the second time, the President has nothing to do. In the worst case scenario, we had hoped that there would be a government shutdown, like we see in developed democracies. Because if the timelines for budget passes, like we see now, Trump is faced with a possible shutdown, a provisional approval of 30 days, if you had rejected for just one day, you would have sent the executive into shutdown. That's what is expected of parliaments. It it needs to happen in this country for the citizens to feel the authority of Parliament as the temple of democracy in the country.